If you don't like to watch cute cartoon characters getting cut in half, then look away now. Oh, sorry, timing was a bit off there. Oh, whoops. Welcome to Swarm, a game that creates a perfect balance between survival and sacrifice. A game which revels in the guilty pleasure of delivering sadistic demises to the game's moronic stars, the Swarmites. Swarm is a puzzle platformer with a difference. Instead of controlling a single Swarmite, you play as a kind of sadistic Pied Piper, leading up to 50 of the little blue blobs as they bumble cluelessly towards certain doom on a weird planet which seems to be built entirely out of death-dealing implements. It's a world full of fire and pain, and unluckily for the Swarmites you control, it's also a world that they will need to navigate in order to collect DNA to give to Mama, who births the Swarmites at the start of every level. The DNA scattered around the levels is either just randomly strewn on the floor or hidden away in boxes that must be broken open, plus there are larger strands of DNA that are placed in hard-to-reach locations. These strands act as collectibles, a certain number of which will need to be gathered in order to progress through the game. This juicy DNA gives you points, and the more DNA you collect, the higher your score multiplier, so it pays to keep moving and collecting as fast as possible to keep your multiplier high and your points higher. Mama is very strict, and in order to progress you will have to reach a certain number of points to unlock the next level, and the targets she sets are very high and often very hard to achieve, especially when you first start the game and are still getting to grips with the controls. Moving from left to right, you control your 50 Swarmites simultaneously, and as you cross the treacherous terrain, you will have a few moves at your disposal which will keep the little beggars out of harm's way. Most of the time. A simple button press will bunch the Swarmites together if you need to squeeze through a tight gap or cross a thin bridge, while another will spread them out, ideal for collecting as much DNA as possible as fast as you can. The Swarmites will also jump as a unit. They can dash and bash into boxes and buttons to unleash more points or remove obstacles, and you can also command them to stack up on top of each other so you can reach high places or cross large chasms. One of the biggest difficulties when it comes to playing Swarm is actually getting over the habit of keeping your characters alive. I guarantee no matter how hard you try, the first few times you play Swarm, you will try to keep all 50 alive for the whole level. You can't, and to be honest, you shouldn't, so don't feel guilty when one of the pudgy blue morons gets his head lopped off by a circular saw or gets exploded on a landmine. In Swarm, the needs of the many always outweigh the needs of the few, and sacrifice plays a massive part in the game. It's a totally guilt-ridden experience to start with, but soon you will come to terms with the fact that not every Swarmite will come through this unscathed if you want to beat the game. As long as you have one Swarmite left alive to keep the score multiplier going, you will be fine. The more Swarmites you can successfully rescue though, the higher your overall points will be, so the little clutches of Swarmite eggs that will hatch when you approach them will replenish your swarm and keep their numbers as high as possible. It can be very tricky getting the right balance between getting points and going fast enough though. You have to rely on the multipliers to get your score as high as possible, and to do this you need a continuous stream of points, but the fact is it's actually really hard to achieve some of the targets that have been set. This means that you can expect to play and replay levels countless times in order to work out the exact routes and timings you will need to get your score soaring. So people with short attention spans and a lack of patience are going to be a little put off here. The occasional boss battle and some really cool death medals that you can unlock add some extra enjoyment and originality to the already unique experience, and although it lacks any kind of depth in terms of story or character development, guiding the hapless little aliens around the spiky, burny world is weirdly compelling and most importantly good fun, thanks mainly to the bucket loads of humour that Hothead Games have injected into the game. With its just one more go style gameplay, fans of titles such as Super Meat Boy and Trials HD should be in blue blood heaven with Swarm, but be warned, the game is pretty short with only 10 levels and it has an absurdly hard difficulty curve. Don't get me wrong, it's that good kind of hard which makes you want to try it again and again and again, but replaying the same level over and over can get pretty frustrating, especially as the game point blank refuses to let you go any further until you've unlocked all the level requirements Mama is looking for. Still, if you love original games with a great sense of humour and love high score chasing, then Swarm comes highly recommended. Just make sure you don't get too attached to any of the Swarmites, because chances are, as soon as you form a bond with one, it'll get impaled, burned, exploded, melted, or possibly all of the above at the same time, which can be pretty heartbreaking if you've already named it. Mine was called Bernard. I miss you, Bernie. Why, oh why?